Hi everyone, it's Joe here from Lawn Solutions Australia and welcome to this episode of Turf Talk where we're off-site today. We're at the Australian Sports Turf Managers Association Conference and I'm joined by a very special guest, the grounds manager at the famous Suncorp Stadium, Matt Oliver. Matt, thanks for being here.
Morning Joe, great to be with you.
So you got a big job, you got a pretty important job. How long have you been at the stadium now?
Coming up to 2 years now, but 6 years in Queensland since moving from Melbourne. So.
Oh, you're not from Queensland, I keep forgetting that.
No.
Are you a...
Mexican.
Mexican. Are you a diehard Maroon now, or
I
do you fly that? You are.
No, absolutely. No, that was part of the prerequisites.
We'll end this one here, then that'll do us. But so we'll start there though. We'll start with Origin. Yep. So you've got Game 3 there this year. Is that the biggest event for you on your calendar?
Or? Yeah, it's certainly up there. It's probably the most highly anticipated event. That one, and certainly a Rugby International would be right up there as well as Magic Round. So they're
do you feel the pressure come Origin?
You do. There's a lot of external noise and there's always a lot of media interest, obviously, in the field and how it's going to perform and who it's going to suit the best. And, obviously we can't control the weather, so we can try and control everything else. But, if Mother Nature's not on our side, it's not on our side.
Yeah, that's right. And just we're a turf podcast, so we've got to mention the type of turf. What kind of grass are you working on there at the moment?
We're a full ryegrass field at the moment, but obviously a Bermuda grass playing surface with some wintergreen through there at the two ends. We've just been trialling some different grasses over the years. And, so at the moment we're a full ryegrass playing surface that we started oversowing in late March, and we've been had some good results this year. So
it'd cop a bit of oversowing too, I'd imagine, with the amount of traffic that goes on.
A huge amount of oversowing, and there's probably never stops until about now. So every sort of week we're putting some seed out. And
every stadium's got a system, whether that's some sort of hybrid system. What kind of system Suncorp on?
Yeah, so we've got Sisgrass, which is stitched playing surface. So we never had the stitched surface until the Women's World Cup last year, which was a prerequisite to have a hybrid playing surface. And so we put it in for that and had some really good results. And we had some major concerts over summer. We replaced 14,500 square metres of turf. Decided to make the decision to restitch for 2024, which has been a great addition for us, and it's given us that confidence that the field's going to hold together.
So has it always been a hybrid system? Suncorp has it, or for the
No, it's been stabilised. It's always been a stabilised playing surface. But when we went to the World Cup, the whole process with leading into the World Cup, they said to us, your surface isn't hybrid, so we needed to go down either a carpet-based system or opt for the stitch system. So we went down the stitching system.
For those that don't know, the stabilised system, it's still just natural grass on top, isn't it? And the stabilisation comes in the soil profile?
Absolutely. So the current system we've got, minus the stitching, is just some mesh elements mixed in with the soil at the turf farm. So the turf comes in at 50 millimetres thick. And that's basically the stabilised factor. So we're never going to get any divots going through that layer. But what we found is that we just weren't quite getting the stability that we needed, so that's why we've gone down the stitching mechanism this year. So we've got 5 tonnes of plastic in the playing surface holding the top 90 millimetres together, and it's been an incredible addition to what we do.
So you noticed a big difference as soon as you went to that?
Absolutely massive. And the key difference is just the amount of material we lose every event. Generally we pull off 2 cubic metres of grass, debris, chaff, clippings after every rugby league event. Now we're pulling off a quarter to a half of that. Biggest difference was last year we were a non-stitched playing surface during Magic Round with 8 games. This year we had 9 games. With a stitched surface, and last year we pulled off 22 cubic metres. This year we pulled off 5.
Wow!
It's a huge difference, and it's been a fantastic addition for us.
You just mentioned Magic Round, and we'll focus on that a little bit now, because I'd imagine, from a stress point of view, that'll probably be the most stressful time of year for you. So Magic Round, just explain a little bit for those that don't know what Magic Round actually is and what it entails for you.
So Magic Round is where all 8 NRL games are played at the venue over one weekend. The NRL, in their wisdom this year, decided to play NRL W Women's State of Origin the day before Magic Round, so we had 9 games in 4 days. So it was really intense, and obviously it meant that everyone's coming up to Brisbane. There's so much scrutiny on the venue and the field, and the the team was pretty stretched over that 4 days. But basically, it meant that we had to have all our ducks in a row. And again, we couldn't control the weather. We had a really wet Thursday and a really wet Friday, so we were pretty wet and ugly Thursday and Friday night. But we had a beautiful, typical Brisbane winters weekend, which was nice, Saturday and Sunday. So a lot of hours. But the main difference between that and a standard weekend for us is there was no changeovers from different codes. So it was actually pretty simple to kind of just finish the event, clean up the field after each night, and then get up in the morning, mow, line mark, walk the field for any divots or debris, go again.
It's pretty unprecedented, that level of traffic on a field. I know you do cross code through the weekend, but to have that much traffic on that small bit of grass, which doesn't get a lot of sunlight in either, mind you, and you get the weather. But there's a whole other side of it that people don't probably understand, and that is the pitch or the playing surface is the centre of attention, not just for the players, not just for the NRL, but for the whole national media for that period of time. How do you go dealing with that?
It's generally pretty good.
Yeah.
Most people are quite understanding. There's always one or two outlets or journalists that, I don't know, they've got to be in their bonnet because they're trying to keep
stay relevant.
Yeah, it's hard. And there's always one or two that try to go us, and it is frustrating because they don't realise that there is a human element to what we're doing, and there's 3 or 4 or 5 of us that dedicate our lives to that playing surface every day, and we don't set the event schedule. We don't control the weather. We control everything in between. And if we've got a really heavy event schedule, which Suncorp does, and Brisbane is the wettest capital city outside of Darwin with the heaviest event schedule, it is almost the perfect storm leading into Magic Round, because leading into Magic Round, there's all 3 codes have been operating throughout that first part of the year. And then all of a sudden everything's just highlighted then for Magic Round, and like you say, all eyes are on the venue.
Do you have to do media yourself, or you can kind of duck that a little bit?
No, well, generally there is a lot of interest. So our media team at Suncorp do a really good job in kind of taking most of that and sort of drip feeding me where I need to come in. Our general manager as well does a fair bit of media. We kind of pick and choose what we want to do. But certainly we never shy away from any major interest or whether that's positive or negative. Certainly had some negative media over the summer with concerts and soccer. And certainly leading into Magic Round, it's generally like the same questions year on year around, how's it going to go? How's the weather going to be? And it's like, well, how long's a piece of string?
That's right.
You can kind of play a pretty straight bat. But try and answer the questions as best you can. And generally most people are pretty positive. So.
It's a credit to you. Through COVID, they played footy in Sydney on a couple of centralised ovals, and they fell to bits pretty quickly. And for you guys to cop the where you get and still produce the surface you produce, it's a credit to you all, and you do a really good job. And I know it's not just the weather that are challenges. The way the stadium's actually designed and built would provide some challenges too. How do you deal with shade? Because if you ever watch Origin or any big event, they do the flyover with the drone shot of the stadium. It's a pretty small opening at the top.
It is.
How do you handle the bits that don't get any sun?
So obviously mid to late 2000s there was the invention of artificial grow lighting technology, which came out of Europe, and a couple of stadiums down south in Melbourne, Marvel Stadium and the MCG sort of led the way in artificial lighting technology in this part of the world, and I was fortunate to be part of that at Marvel Stadium back in those days, and so basically we've got 6 of those large grow lighting rigs that we operate at the northern end of the field, pretty much from the start of April right the way through until the end of August. Northern 25 metres of our pitch this time of year is receiving no sunlight at all.
0.
And the rest of the field from the 20 metre line back to the southern end is 5 hours. 5.5 hours throughout the day from west to east, and then it's back to bed kind of thing. So,
And the grow lights they obviously make a big difference.
Massive difference. Certainly, because the grass is essentially photosynthesizing 24 hours, 7 days a week, even on overcast days. And we've actually found that when we have the lights in the same position for 3 or 4 days, week on week, the northern end will actually be the best part of the playing surface compared to the southern end, which is actually getting natural sunlight and more wind flow and that sort of stuff. But they're an incredible tool. They were sort of designed to come into the industry to save on turf replacement costs, which they have done, but certainly used effectively. They actually help produce a better playing surface and within just normal natural sunlight without having them. So.
Yeah, we were lucky enough to just go to the UK and visit Old Trafford, Lords, Wimbledon, and they all seem to be using them over there. They can't quite live without them.
No, you can't. No, not with tall grandstands and limited. when the sun's at its lowest in winter, when all the sports are played, unfortunately, you're just not getting that sunlight into the venue. So
you can find the bits that get no natural sunlight are actually the best parts of your field because of these grow lights.
Yeah, certainly some of them, absolutely. Like, inside the rugby league field will play. But in our dead ball line at the northern end of the field, it's always a balancing act. It's like you're on a knife edge. It's good, and then until it's not, and then it's a really tough one to then get back. So we've just got to try and nurse that through. We never water it at all this time of year, unless out of necessity. Through irrigating in a chemical or something like that. But it is a difficult one. We're trying to managing 2 microclimates essentially.
Yeah, sure.
There, so.
Sure. Now, when we watch cricket on TV, we often see the curator get interviewed or get put under a lot of pressure. Do you get much influence from players, teams, that sort of stuff when it comes to the pitch, or they kind of leave you alone?
No, most of them are really good.
Yeah.
We're really lucky in that aspect. Like we'll have some conversations with the hirers, the clubs or the tenants that are playing at the venue, and they'll sort of ask for, some interesting, I guess, tidbits around the playing surface, and they generally want to know what kind of stops to wear, and then I'll tell them, because generally a lot of our events are played at night time and it can be quite slippery, and I always say, look, they're on the side of caution, wear your longer stops. We do get quite greasy and quite slippery, and then the answer I always get back is, oh no, we don't want to wear long stops because the players wear the short stops because they're more comfortable. I'm like, why ask me?
Well, just a question.
But no, generally they leave us alone, and if we get good feedback, great. But we generally don't hear much feedback at all unless it's negative, which is generally from the soccer teams. Over summer, where we're managing concerts and soccer at the same time, which is a real challenge.
Let's move on to soccer and the A-League, because I know, just from my very limited experience, I know there's a lot stricter specs when it comes to preparing a soccer or a football pitch as opposed to a rugby league pitch. Now, they'd be pretty strict on shortcut grass height, would they? Are they very finicky when it comes to their surface?
They are, to a certain degree. They certainly prefer it to be more consistent, I guess. Like obviously the difference between league and union and compared to soccer is the surface to ball interaction. Like obviously the ball's played along the surface a lot more in soccer. Certainly it's more. They would certainly like it to be flatter, more consistent. Grass height's not really an issue for us. Generally between that 22 to 24 millimetres, which is where we're at for league and union anyway. We generally might get a little shorter towards spring and summer. But no, it's more, they want it dead flat. It's more, they just want a uniform appearance. And if they see an area that's been replaced after a concert, and then there's an area of the field that's not being replaced, it's just a visual thing, and it's like an apprehension of, that's going to play differently to this. And that's where, we do our testing on traction, ball roll, ball height, hardness, all that sort of stuff, and just make sure that we're, within our parameters. So
a highlight from a soccer point of view would have been the Women's World Cup,
Absolutely.
which was last year?
Yeah, last year.
End of last year. What was that experience like for you? Because I imagine you deal with State of Origin, from a media point of view, it was probably heightened.
It was huge.
Oh, wasn't it? Yeah, it was massive.
Yeah, it was massive. And I guess the main difference was that was an exclusive use period for FIFA. So there was a 4-week period leading into the tournament where we could renovate the field, leave it alone, and let it do its thing.
Okay.
And then there was nothing on the pitch. There was no training or anything. It was just match days. Yeah. And they were the scrutiny was huge because their FIFA standards were so high.
Yeah, okay.
It had to be within a real narrow range on hardness, ball roll, ball rebound, moisture content, all these sort of things. And, we're getting tested every single day and getting feedback as to where we're at. And like I mentioned before around microclimates, it was really difficult to try and manage that.
Yeah, sure.
And then it made it difficult because we're a 10,000 square metre playing surface, and then they stick LED advertising boards around the pitch, which then means that we have to then maintain behind the LED boards with a whip snipper and sometimes a pair of scissors, because they don't want whip snippers or mechanical machinery around really expensive LED advertising boards, and couldn't use the sprinklers around them, so there's a lot of hand watering, just stuff like that we probably didn't really anticipate going into the tournament. But from a playability perspective, it's as good a playing surface as I think we as a venue have ever produced. And the feedback all the venues around the Women's World Cup had was a fantastic success, and I think everyone really enjoyed themselves. The crowds were huge, TV ratings were massive, and the Australia-France quarterfinal that we had with the longest penalty shootout in World Cup history across men's and women's World Cups was, an absolute career highlight. So,
I remember sitting at home watching that. I think everyone remembers sitting there watching that. It was kind of like the Aloisi penalty all those years ago. It was where were you when that moment happened, and to be playing on your field, that must be a pretty cool feeling.
That was pretty awesome. And it's funny, we joke because I think the 3 games prior had all gone to extra time and all gone to penalties, and it was like, oh God, this one's definitely going to go to penalties.
See, that's things people sitting at home would never ever think about. Things like the LED light boards and how much extra pressure that adds onto the grounds people. They just see a pretty field on the TV, and I thought it'd be like FIFA would say, you're the expert, you just get the field ready how you want. But no, they're asking for data.
It's an insurance policy for them where they want all of their 8 or 9 match day venues to all be as consistent as each other.
Yeah. It was so similar to, I mentioned before we just went to the UK, it's very similar to Wimbledon, and what the testing they do with STRI before the championships is ball bounce, moisture readings. It's a precise science, isn't it, in a lot of way. And you mentioned before Brisbane gets more rainfall than anyone. What happens if you got a moisture level that's got to be between this much, and then you get 20 mil of rain in the next hour? What do you do?
Well, there's not much you can do when that happens, but that's where we rely really heavily on forecasting and leading into those sort of tournaments or match days where you're going to get some rain. It'll be a case of aerate prior, and then put out a push through wetting agent or something like that, just to get that water away from the playing surface. Try and get it away. At least then you can sit back and go, right, well, we've tried everything we can. Rather than just sitting there and accepting the fact that we're going to get 40, 50 mil of rain and we haven't done anything. Well, that's pretty much my philosophy on that.
Well, I hope that gives everyone a little bit of an insight when you're sitting at home watching on TV, looking at the grounds, to know what they actually go through on a day-to-day basis. But there's a whole other level to this, because it's not just dealing with sports teams and sporting events. Suncorp hosts a lot of concerts too, and I imagine there'd be dirt bikes and monster trucks and everything else in between at certain times. But what's the process like for putting a stage in the middle of your field and having tens of thousands of people walk all over it for a concert? How do you prepare for something like that?
A lot of meetings early. Yeah. So meeting with the promoters and then coming up with what they're wanting from a footprint perspective, from a drivable floor. So basically, where there's a area of the field that has the drivable floor on there. So for cranes, forklifts, trucks, that sort of stuff, and
track matting sort of stuff.
Yeah. So we try and limit the amount of that flooring that goes down, because as soon as that's down for any length of time, it's an instant replacement. So generally a concert footprint, we're looking at between 15 and 1800 square metres of drivable floor, and then basically everything outside of that is pedestrian floor for the punters to stand on, and then there'll be a delay road tower at the southern end of the field where there's a 100-ton crane that sets up the delay towers for sound, and then that's potentially a replacement as well. Ideally not. But an example of where we've got to think on our feet is, we just had 3 Pink concerts over 2 months. We had 2 shows in February, 1 in March, where she came back, just due to the first 2 being so successfully ticketed. Yeah. Her stage footprint changed from 1,800 square metres to 2,550 square metres 3 days before it was due to come in.
Yeah, right.
And, you can't plan for that. Well, we had to. It was like, well, okay, we're just going to have to replace more turf. And, and that was just what we did. And unfortunately, after the first lot of concerts, we had a game of soccer 3 days after the concert finished, and then a Super Rugby game, Reds and Waratahs, the next day. So there's no real rest for for any of us.
What's it look like when you pack everything up after a Pink concert?
Horrible. So that northern end is completely removed. Yeah. And people don't actually realise that we're removing a stage footprint, so everything that's involved with all the infrastructure with the stage and the concert, that's all got to leave the venue, and then we've then got to bring in trucks and trucks and trucks of turf gear, turf, sand, but it's all got to go in the same spot as where everything was for the concert, so it's a logistical nightmare.
You're not packing up here and working over the other side.
It is, honestly, it is really difficult to work in with all the different departments and try and prioritise. Yeah. But unfortunately for us, it's like, go time. We've got to just get on and get and rip that playing surface out, get the turf in, and away we go. But outside of that, it's the 80% of the playing surface that hasn't been replaced. Yeah. It's business as usual. It's okay. Well, we run a magnet over the playing surface to pick up any metal that may have been left behind from any scaffold or staging. We'll then run the Amazon over to vacuum up cable ties, hair ties, clips, chewing gum wrappers, confetti, you name it. And then we'll run a mower over the field, an aerator. We'll get some granular fertiliser or fungicide or liquid fertiliser, water it in, and try and agronomically improve as much as we can in that short amount of time. And then it's pretty much, from then it's, once the turf's in at the northern end, it's around camouflaging. It's about, trying to marry in the new turf with the old, and put some lines and some goals in, and put on a brave face and and smile for the cameras.
Do you get much of a score from the magnet when you run over the field after a concert?
Yeah, there's always a few 20-cent, 50-cent coins that all get left behind.
Split it between the boys and play on.
Even if we pick up one screw, it's worthwhile doing.
Oh yeah.
But certainly at the stage end, there's R clips, circlips, pins.
Yeah.
Screws, there's washers. The amount of washers is just ridiculous. But no, it's worthwhile, and it's an essential part of any stadium that has concerts. You never want to have any metal left out on the playing surface, because if you don't find it, your mower certainly will.
Yeah, 100%.
And then it's an expensive repair job.
So again, next time you're watching TV and you see a bit of a 20 or 30 metre wide patch of grass, it looks like it's just been there. It probably has just been put down. So they pack the stadiums up, they leave. As soon as you possibly can, you're stripping out the grass and relaying new turf straight away to be played on in a couple of days' time.
A couple of days. Generally we get a little bit longer time than that.
Yeah.
But there are times where it's straight into it. Yeah. And there's no real time for mistakes. It's like if we have breakdowns, we can't afford breakdowns. So you've got to have contingency there for machinery replacements and that sort of stuff. Yeah. I was speaking to the guys at Twinview when we were doing the Ed Sheeran replacement back in February last year, and the day we were harvesting the turf, we had 81 mil of rain. It's like friggin' hell. But we had to just get on with it.
Yeah.
It was horrible, but that was just the way it was. We had, leading in after that Ed Sheeran concert, we had 6 days to replace 10,000 metres, and then we had a Dolphins Roosters NRL game. Just that was locked in. So
the first Dolphins game too. That would have been, wouldn't it?
It was.
Yeah. It's just, again, people cannot understand or fathom the amount of work that goes into this, and it's a credit to you guys, and it's a credit to the technology that's available too to make you be able to do what you do. And I got one question, which I'm sure a lot of people are thinking, listening to this, is you mentioned Ed Sheeran, you mentioned Pink. I think you said before that I think you've had the Chili Peppers, Foo Fighters, State of Origin, Women's World Cup. Do you get a pretty good seat to these events, do you, or what goes on there?
No, generally I'll be part of the event for the night. So I'll generally hang out in my office or make a head out to the floor at some point and watch a bit of the concert. Yeah. And then as soon as the concert's finished, it's pack up time. We're helping pack up chairs and unclipping cable ties from all the chairs on the playing surface. And as soon as the chairs are gone, it's production gets pulled out, and then it's flooring starts getting pulled out. So then as soon as we start getting some visible grass, it's about preparing that as quickly as we can.
Where do you sit for Origin?
In our office.
In your office,
we've got a tunnel at the northeast corner of the field as well, where we generally all congregate and watch. And so that's where we'll be for Origin.
And what's your responsibility? You go out at half time, do you, and you do a bit of a clean up and that sort of thing?
Yep. So Origin's a little different because there's no warm ups on the pitch for Origin.
Oh yeah. So they do it in the sheds, don't they?
Yeah, everything's in the shed, same as Magic Round.
Yeah.
So we'll pretty much and we head out there after the entertainment's done for kick-off and just make sure there's nothing being left behind, like firework debris or anything like that. And then, essentially like any other NRL match or union or soccer match, we're out there at half-time, just walking the field just to make sure there's no, chaff or debris left on the playing surface or, any divots or anything like that. So making sure it's safe and playable for the second half.
I'm sure it's an exciting gig at certain times, a hard gig at other times. So I'd imagine there'd be a lot of pressure on you and there's a lot of work that's got to go into it. But that's a great insight for people that are into turf or just into sport in general to see what goes on behind the scenes at such an iconic venue like Suncorp. But before we let you go, I want to get a bit more of an insight into your journey in the turf industry. I know you said before you're a Mexican, you're from Victoria, you've come up to a lot warmer climate. I'm sure you're enjoying that. But how did you first get into turf, or what inspired you to first start working in our industry?
There was an old man actually in the UK of all places. So I was over in the UK as an 18-year-old playing cricket, and I had a couple of days off from my job, and I ended up just going down to the club and just chatting to the groundsman because I was a pretty decent or pretty handy fast bowler, I guess, as an 18-year-old, and took a real interest in how wickets were prepared back then, and that was pretty much my first foray. So I got into it with him, and basically by the end of my first season there, I was helping him prepare the practice pitches and then preparing for the centre wicket and looking after the outfield, and that was pretty much my introduction. And then I came back from my stint in the UK, and it was about looking into, okay, what do I do? How do I get into this? Because when I was leaving school or in year 12, I was always going to be a journalist.
Okay,
so, and then here I am now, looking after sports turf. So it's very, very different to probably what I would have imagined coming up through high school. So I got into an apprenticeship on a golf course called Sandhurst in southeast Melbourne. So I did my apprenticeship there, and then went to Marvel Stadium, which was then known as Etihad Stadium.
Yep.
So I was there for 5 years, just as a qualified groundsperson. Did my diploma, or Cert 3 and diploma through that period.
Yep.
And I wanted to, just gain some more, I guess, responsibility and people management skills. So I took a step to Melbourne Grammar School with a man called John Shannon, who is a great mentor, friend of mine, even to this day, which is great.
Yep.
So I was there for a couple of years, and as the head curator or manager of the sports complex out at Port Melbourne. And then a really interesting role came up for me out of left field in Port Moresby, Papua New Guinea, where I went over to project manage the National Football Stadium of Port Moresby, where the PNG Hunters now play in the Queensland Cup. It's the national stadium for Papua New Guinea, so the Kumals and the Orchids play out of there. And primarily I was there for the Women's World Cup in 2016, FIFA Women's World Cup. So that was a huge tournament for me back then, as my first sort of grounds management role, my first manager's role. And unfortunately, the contract ended 12 months after, and then returned to Melbourne, back to Marvel Stadium for a couple of years under Gavin there, and then decided it was time to look for somewhere warmer. So moved up to sunny Brisbane, where we are now. I went to the Queensland Sport and Athletics Centre as grounds manager for 4 years, and now at Suncorp coming up to 2. So that's pretty much my journey. It's taken a few turns, and I guess sliding doors moments to get to where I am now. But no, I absolutely love where I am, and I think every day I walk into work, there's something going on. There's always a bit of a buzz around Brisbane when there's major events on, and it's a great place to work. I've got a really supportive turf team, but also I've got a really supportive venue team as well that really place an emphasis on the playing surface being outside of the building itself. It is the most important asset. So it's really important that we protect that at all costs.
What was working in PNG like? Because I know I've seen their matches on TV, and it's a godly place for them almost when the footy comes to town. What's it like coming from Melbourne, working in a climate like that?
I went straight from Melbourne to PNG, and I guess the main difference is temperature.
Smacking in the face.
And humidity. It's just like 31, 32 degrees, similar to Singapore, like all year. And the main difference is Port Moresby is actually a really, really dry place for 9 or 10 months of the year. But really windy because it's coastal.
So
that was a real challenge. So, when you're trying to program in fungicide applications or anything like that, it was you had to kind of do it early in the morning or really late at night.
Couch grass?
That was a seeded couch. Princess 77 was the variety. Because obviously, I'm sure you can appreciate there's no turf farms in Papua New Guinea. So everything was done that way. There was some trials done, before my time on different grasses at what was going to work, and Princess was chosen and had been quite successful. But actually working there is it's incredible. Like you say, it's a rugby league mad place, and any time any NRL player sort of walks through that airport, everyone, word gets around really quickly, and everyone's on WhatsApp or whatever the social media apps are, and they're there. And I remember going there for a PM's 13 game a few years ago, and there was like 15,000 people waiting at the airport for the Kangaroos to arrive.
That's
it was
absurd.
Incredible. You've never heard there's people crying. It was unbelievable, but I've got some really great friends still in PNG and catch up with, and
that's great.
Converse with every week. So
what a journey!
It's a great place.
What a journey! It's certainly be an interesting experience. And just finishing off now, what's the thing you like most about the job you do in the industry that you're working? Because you go to an event like this, it's a pretty connected industry in a lot of ways. And what's the highlight for you working in an industry like this?
It is. It's the connections you make, right? And I love coming to events like this because, you can go 10 to 12 months without seeing people or talking to people, and you turn up and it's like, oh, great, there's so many people here from all around Australia and New Zealand, and, we've all got the same interests, we've all got the same goals, the same challenges. So that's pretty much, probably one of the main ones is around the, the connections and the friendships that I've certainly made in this industry. But from a job perspective, I absolutely get a real kick out of, preparing our playing surface for, the best athletes in their chosen sport, and we still do get a real kick out of it. And as soon as you stop getting a kick out of it, it's probably time to then look in the mirror and think about doing something else. And, but no, for where we're at the moment, really enjoying it, and really passionate about our industry, and we're really excited about the innovations that are coming to the industry. And as a venue and as a turf team, we're certainly always looking at the latest and greatest technologies that can help us improve, and we want to remain at the top of the pile and remain world class. So that's where we want to be.
Oh well, everyone thinks of you in that way, I'm sure. Even just you get around an event like this and people have a lot of respect for you and the venue and your team. So you clearly do a great job, and we appreciate you sharing your story and sharing what goes on in a stadium like Suncorp with us here. I'm sure everyone gets a real kick out of it, and next time they're watching the TV, I think they can have a fair bit of appreciation for the work that you and your team do. So thanks so much for joining us. It was a great chat, and we appreciate you making the time for us.
All good, Joe. Thanks very much for having me on.